The air in the huge, open-plan office suddenly felt thick and cold. I stood frozen by my desk as Mark, the new CEO, strode toward me. He didn't just look angry. He looked like he was acting in a movie. Everyone stopped working and watched. He pointed a shaking, accusing finger at me. "Clara," he boomed, his voice echoing over the quiet office. "Effective immediately, you are fired. You are a complete liability." He didn't stop there. He went on to publicly accuse me of being completely responsible for the catastrophic data breach that had happened late the night before. "Your incompetence and your lack of security judgment caused the problem. You are a security risk to this entire company," he yelled. The words felt like sharp, cold knives. I looked at my colleagues, the people I had worked late nights with for years, and they just stared back in stunned silence, afraid to move or speak. Two huge men in security uniforms were already standing right behind Mark. They grabbed my arms. I tried to tell them that the breach wasn't my fault, that the logs would prove I was offline, but Mark just laughed, a short, cruel sound. They pulled me away from my desk, not even letting me grab my purse or my personal laptop. As they forced me out, Mark leaned in very close to my ear, his breath hot and nasty. He whispered, low and slow, so only I could hear. "You should have just kept your head down." I arrived back at my quiet apartment, still shaking from the public humiliation. It was a strange, cold comfort to be alone. I immediately tried to log into my old work accounts. Nothing worked. My company computer access, the main server, my professional work email, it was all completely revoked, locked down tight. It was like I had never even existed at the company, Oratech. I felt like a ghost. A few hours later, a serious-looking courier arrived and handed me a huge, thick envelope. Inside was an official legal letter. It was written in long, difficult words, but the message was completely clear. I had signed a very strict non-disclosure agreement, NDA, and a non-disparagement clause. If I spoke even one single word about the company, the data breach, or Mark's cruel firing of me, they would completely ruin me with incredibly ruinous lawsuits. I was silenced. I was trapped in a digital prison, unable to defend myself or clear my name. I sat on my sofa, staring at the useless letter. I felt completely defeated. I reached into my purse to find my house keys. As I was emptying out the contents, my fingers brushed against something hard and unfamiliar. I pulled it out. It was a forgotten, old, bulky burner phone, a relic from my very first days at Oratech. I stared at the old gray, plastic phone in my hand. It was a complete relic, a simple phone from years ago. I had completely forgotten it existed. I had been given this burner phone years ago when I first started working on the company's most secret, important projects. The phone had only one real purpose: to be a dedicated, secure line for only one single person. That one person was the reclusive, powerful primary investor of Oratech, a mysterious man named Mr. Alistair Sterling. We had only ever spoken a few times, but his name was like gold in the company. Mark, the CEO who had just fired me, claimed to have a very close, personal relationship with Mr. Sterling, saying they talked every single week. This strong, personal connection was the reason everyone trusted Mark. But now, I had nothing left to lose. My reputation was ruined, my job was gone, and I was being threatened with a massive lawsuit. I pressed the power button on the old phone. I held my breath, waiting. A tiny, weak screen flickered to life. The battery icon showed only one small bar of power left. I quickly checked the contacts. There was only one save number on the entire phone. It was simply labeled, A. Sterling. With a sudden desperate surge of courage, I pressed the call button. The burner phone was heavy in my hand as the line began to ring, a slow old-fashioned sound. It rang 4 times before a voice answered. It wasn't the sharp, powerful voice I expected from a legendary, multi-million-dollar investor. The voice was weak, shaky, and sounded like a very old man. "Hello," he asked, sounding confused. I quickly identified myself, trying to sound professional and calm. "Hello, sir. My name is Clara, and I'm calling from Oratech. I believe you are Mr. Alistair Sterling, our lead investor." There was a long silence on the other end, and then the man slowly replied, "Ora, what? I don't know that company. My name is Alistair Sterling, yes, but I'm a completely retired bookkeeper. I think you must have the wrong number, dear. My blood ran cold. The man's words were simple, but they completely shattered the foundation of the company I had worked for. Before I could hang up, the confused man added one more sentence that completely made my stomach drop. Though it is quite funny, he continued. A man called me a few years ago. He was very insistent on getting my old ID number for what he called a pension form. I told him no, of course. I knew the retired bookkeeper wasn't lying. I spent the next few hours working quickly on my small personal laptop, digging deep into public records and old databases. I found the real Alistair Sterling. He was a quiet, harmless, 78-year-old man living a simple life, with absolutely no connection to the high-tech world of venture capital or big business. I cross-referenced this real man with all of Orateka's public press releases. Our company always talked about the legendary, brilliant investor Sterling, who had put the first big money into the company. The more I dug, the clearer the terrifying truth became. Mark didn't just forge a signature on a few documents. He had completely fabricated the entire identity of a powerful, mysterious investor to give his failing startup complete credibility and attract other, real investors who wanted to be where the legendary money was. It was all a huge, complex lie. I kept searching, feeling a growing wave of disbelief and cold rage. Then I found a small, low-resolution photo of the real Mr. Sterling online. It was a picture from a small, local church event. I stared at the man's frail, kind face. My heart thumped hard in my chest. I recognized him. He was the sweet, confused old man who often bags groceries at the small supermarket right near my apartment. I had to see the real Mr. Sterling in person. I drove to his quiet, small house, feeling a mixture of fear and urgent need. He opened the door, looking completely frightened by my sudden, unexpected appearance. I quickly introduced myself again, and told him the terrible truth. That his name, his identity, was being used as a huge, powerful lie to support a massive fraud worth millions. He was a little frightened, but he was also sharp and intelligent enough to see the grave danger. He quickly invited me inside his modest home. He then showed me a file full of strange, old emails and letters he had received over the last few years. At the time, they had seemed completely simple and benign, things like address verification or a survey for retirees. But now we both realized they were all part of a planned, complex scheme. They were used by Mark's team to steal and verify his identity piece by piece. As the sun started to set, I stood up, feeling a huge rush of both satisfaction and deep fear. I had found the truth, but the truth was incredibly dangerous. I thanked him quietly and promised to protect him. I walked out of his small house and closed the front gate. As I reached the sidewalk, a huge black sedan with tinted windows pulled up slowly right to the curb. The driver's door slowly, silently opened. The man who stepped out of the black sedan was not a rough, aggressive security guard. He was tall, calm, and perfectly dressed in an expensive, dark suit. His voice was low and completely even, but it held a terrifyingly clear, threatening tone. This was not Mark's usual, frantic style. This man was cold, professional, and dangerous. He didn't yell or physically touch me. He just stood there and told me to immediately cease her inquiries into matters that don't concern her. He didn't ask me what I knew. He already knew everything. He casually mentioned that they knew where I lived and where Mr. Sterling lived, implying they were watching both of us. The calm threat of that professional man was far more terrifying than Mark's public yelling had been. This was a completely new, more powerful enemy. Before he got back into the sedan, he handed me a blank business card. The card felt heavy and cold in my hand. I flipped it over. Written neatly on the back in perfect dark handwriting was the name, Cygnus Holdings. He drove away slowly, leaving me alone on the quiet street. I stood there, looking at the card, knowing I had just met the true enemy, the dark power that was controlling Mark. Back in my apartment, I immediately started researching Cygnus Holdings. My laptop screen lit up with the cold financial truth. Cygnus Holdings was a huge, complex shell corporation. It was the true, quiet source of all of Orateka's major initial funding. When I started digging into the financial reports I remembered from my old job, The realization hit me like a physical punch. The money that Cygnus was investing was not standard venture capital from big, well-known firms. The money was being rapidly and deliberately cycled through Oratech from unknown, completely obscure international sources. The true origin of the huge money had been purposefully and expertly obscured. The purpose of Oratech was not to create new, great technology, it was to clean the money. I suddenly understood the true danger of the data breach that Mark had so publicly blamed on me. The breach wasn't an accident. It was a planned, deliberate cover-up designed to erase a specific, highly illegal multi-million-dollar transaction that had gone through the system the night before. Oratech was not a failing, small startup. It was a sophisticated, powerful money laundering operation. And Mark was just the greedy, loud face of the massive scheme. I was no longer fighting for my old job. I was fighting against a huge, terrifying criminal network. As I was staring at the evidence of the money laundering on my laptop screen, it suddenly happened. I watched in frozen horror as my own laptop screen completely changed right in front of my eyes. My cursor was suddenly moving on its own, quickly and expertly controlled by an invisible hand. I was being remotely hacked in real time. Files that I had just spent hours organizing started to completely disappear, vanish into thin air. I tried to stop it, but I was too slow. A short, terrifying message was quickly typed onto a blank text document before my eyes, the words appearing one by one. Last warning. The speed and the skill of the hack were terrifying. They weren't just watching me. They were completely inside my digital life, moving around my personal files. I immediately yanked the power cord out of the wall, killing the laptop completely. The silence in the room was louder than any sound. The violation of my privacy was deep and absolute. Then, my personal phone rang loudly, shattering the tense silence. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "Hello," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The voice on the other end was rough and panicked. It was Mark. He sounded terrified, completely unlike the arrogant CEO who had just fired me. "What have you done, Clara? Who did you talk to? Cygnus knows you're asking about Sterling. You've completely ruined everything." Mark's panicked voice confirmed everything I had already suspected. He wasn't the mastermind, he was just a huge, nervous pawn. He begged me to meet him in a quiet, public place. Against my better, cautious judgment, I agreed. I met him in a secluded, quiet corner of a large city park. He was a complete nervous wreck. He kept looking over his shoulder, his hands shaking so much he couldn't hold his coffee cup steady. He immediately admitted that he had borrowed the real Mr. Sterling's identity a few years ago when the company was just starting out, just to make the initial funding look real and impressive. He confessed that he had later been completely forced into the money laundering scheme by the cold, powerful people at Cygnus Holdings. "They threatened my family, Clara. I had no choice," he pleaded, wiping nervous sweat from his forehead. He begged me to help him take them down. He claimed he was only trying to protect his wife and children. He looked truly pathetic. I knew he was a liar and a thief, but the deep, desperate fear in his eyes seemed absolutely real. He quickly slipped a small, cold, encrypted USB drive into my hand. "It's everything I have on them," he whispered quickly. "The full logs, the names, the bank transfers. I was going to use it as my own protection. Maybe you're the only one smart enough to use it." I held the tiny USB drive in my hand, feeling very suspicious. I knew Mark was desperate, but I also knew he was a complete liar. The drive could easily be a Trojan horse, a powerful virus designed to completely wipe my entire computer and track my location. I decided there was absolutely no way I would access it from my personal laptop. I drove to a large public library and found an old, separate computer that was completely air-gapped, disconnected from my own network, just to be completely safe. The drive was not a trap. It was genuine. Mark hadn't been lying about the evidence. It contained hundreds of complex, hidden files, detailed financial trails, copies of internal, encrypted chat logs, and numerous internal company emails. All of them pointed straight to Cygnus Holdings. The files also contained many references to a secret, huge future operation they called Project Phoenix. I immediately downloaded and encrypted all the crucial data, feeling a huge rush of powerful, electric information. Then I found one small, grainy video file marked with the date of the data breach. I opened it immediately. It showed Mark in his office late that night, looking stressed and hurried. But he was not alone. Standing right next to him, calmly looking over his shoulder as Mark deleted the files, was David, the head of security. The same David who had stood behind Mark, looked at me with cold eyes, and then personally escorted me out of the building. I couldn't believe the video. David, the head of security, had been completely in on the plan to frame me. I felt a renewed wave of betrayal. But just as I was spiraling into anger, I received a secure, encrypted message from an anonymous number. I hesitated, then opened it. It was from David. His message quickly explained everything. He revealed that he was not working for Mark or Cygnus. He had actually been working with the FBI for the last several months. He explained that Mark was so paranoid and reckless that they needed an inside man to watch him. He confirmed that he had quickly planted the USB drive on Mark, knowing that Mark would panic and give it to me. "I needed you to be outside, Clara," the message read. "You're smart enough to organize the data and uncover the full picture, and they won't expect the person they fired to be the biggest threat." David confirmed that Mark was just a greedy pawn, but the people at Cygnus were the true, terrifying criminals. David's final words in the message were cold and urgent. "They're moving up the timeline. The IPO is in 4 weeks. It's not a normal exit strategy. It's the biggest money laundering event they've planned yet. Billions will be cleaned at the moment the stock goes live." The urgent threat from David immediately made me realize that time was running out. I had to check on the most important person in this entire terrible game. The real Mr. Sterling. I drove to his quiet, small house, but the front door was slightly ajar. I walked inside slowly. The house was completely silent and empty. His few simple belongings were still there, but Mr. Sterling was gone. A frightened neighbor saw me looking around and quickly approached me. She whispered that a few hours ago, men in nice suits had pulled up in a huge black SUV. They had told the neighbor that they were from Mr. Sterling's nephew's company and were taking him away for a small family visit. It was a completely professional, quiet kidnapping. My heart sank with a terrible, cold certainty. My actions had put the innocent man in immediate danger. As I stood there, terrified and alone, my personal phone buzzed once. It was a text message from a completely unknown number. I opened it with a shaking hand. It was a chilling photo of the terrified Mr. Sterling sitting in a small, empty room. Below the photo was a short, sharp message: "Stand down or the old man dies." The man in the expensive, dark suit, the one I had met on the street, approached me directly again. He was cold, calm, and completely certain of his power. He found me near the library where I was meeting David. He introduced himself formally for the first time, "Mr. Gray." He made me a dangerous offer. "Clara, Mr. Gray said smoothly, folding his hands politely. "You are smart, but you are not invincible. Drop your entire investigation right now. We will immediately release Mr. Sterling, unharmed, and we will pay you a life-changing sum of money. Enough to buy your own small company." He was trying to appeal to my self-interest and my greed. He even implied that Mark was now completely useless and expendable, and that I could easily have my old director job back if I simply started working for them instead. He saw me as a valuable tool, not a hero. He let the offer hang in the tense air, waiting for my quick, greedy answer. He then gave me a wide, cold smile, one that didn't reach his dark eyes. "Or you can choose to be a hero. But history shows that heroes have a very short life expectancy." He was threatening to kill me. I looked Mr. Gray directly in the eye, and kept my expression completely blank. I knew I couldn't accept his cruel offer, but I also knew I needed to buy time to save Mr. Sterling and destroy his entire operation. "Give me 24 hours to think about it," I told him, trying to sound completely defeated and tempted by the huge amount of money. "It's a lot of money to walk away from." He nodded, satisfied that he had successfully broken my spirit with the sheer scale of the bribe and the threat. As soon as he was gone, I called David, the security head, immediately. I told him I had completely faked accepting the offer. I was now absolutely certain I couldn't back down. Mr. Sterling's life and the global financial system were on the line. The IPO was the huge, final key to their entire scheme. It was the moment they would be at their most powerful, but also their most exposed to the world. "We're not stopping the IPO, David," I declared, feeling a sudden, strange calm wash over me. "It's too late for that, and they'll disappear if we try. We're going to let it happen. But we're going to use their own biggest stage, the global IPO livestream, to completely destroy them." This was the moment of no return. The game had just become deadly. I quickly outlined my huge, audacious master plan to David, and he relayed it to the cautious FBI agent he was working with. The plan was terrifyingly simple and incredibly risky. We would prepare a completely undetectable, custom-built digital dead man switch. This switch would be designed to completely hijack the live, global IPO presentation feed the moment they went live. The moment Orateka's stock valuation was announced to the world, the switch would fire. It would completely override their presentation slides and blast all the forged documents, encrypted chat logs, and financial evidence to the millions of people watching the live stream online. It would turn their moment of greatest financial triumph into a complete, total, public execution. The FBI agent listened, clearly hesitant and uncomfortable with the huge risk. "This is a massive risk, Clara," the agent warned David through a secure line. "If they detect the digital upload even 1 second before it hits, they will immediately kill the stream and completely disappear. And if they suspect you, they will kill you instantly." I knew the risk was huge, but it was the only real path to justice. I had to continue. To make the huge digital attack work, I needed 2 key things: speed and total trust. I secretly reached out to 2 of my most trusted former colleagues at Orateka. First, I found Eliza, a brilliant but overlooked data engineer who had quietly quit a few months ago after Mark yelled at her one too many times. She was the best person I knew at finding security flaws. Second, I contacted Dennis, a completely disgruntled PR manager who was tired of covering up Mark's constant, embarrassing lies. He still had easy access to the internal schedules and the communication systems. I told them only half the truth. That Mark was a fraud and I needed to expose him for the sake of the honest employees. They both immediately agreed to help me build the presentation hack and manage the inevitable media fallout. Dennis delivered a final, crucial piece of information. Mark had scheduled a quick, last-minute, all-hands company meeting to boost morale right before the IPO. "He's going to stand on that stage and use you as a scapegoat one last time, Clara," Dennis warned me. "He'll talk about cutting the fat and how he saved the company." I watched the live stream of the all-hands meeting from my small apartment, my stomach twisted with quiet anger. Mark stood on the main stage, completely lying to the honest employees who worked hard for him. He spoke easily and effortlessly about how they had successfully excised the rot, meaning me, and how the company was now leaner and stronger than ever because of his great, brilliant leadership. The honest, hard-working employees in the crowd completely cheered him on, completely unaware they were being set up for a massive, terrible fall. Then Mark's whole demeanor changed. He got a look of false pride on his face and announced the huge, exciting future that awaited them. He revealed the name of the huge, supposedly revolutionary new product that would be completely unveiled at the IPO. "This," he declared, "is the future of Orateka. Project Phoenix." My blood ran cold again. I instantly recognized the name. Project Phoenix was the exact, same name I had seen in the encrypted financial files on the USB drive. It was not a real product at all. It was the crucial, complex vehicle for the final, massive money laundering event. Mark was going to use the announcement of a fake, huge project to justify the movement of billions of dollars. Eliza, the brilliant data engineer, quickly got to work. She analyzed the files and discovered a small, deep backdoor in the livestream software that Orateka was planning to use for the huge IPO broadcast. It was a clear, unpatched security hole. It was our one single way into their tightly secured digital world. While Eliza worked on the digital side, David, the inside man, contacted me with urgent news. The FBI had successfully confirmed the exact location where they believed Mr. Sterling was being held. It was an old, secure warehouse outside the city limits. David and the FBI immediately planned a huge, coordinated raid to rescue the old man before the IPO, knowing that my plan to expose them might put Mr. Sterling in greater danger. I waited anxiously, my phone clutched in my hand, desperate for good news. The news finally arrived, but it was a cold, cruel twist. The raid was a complete, final failure. The FBI had successfully breached the safe house, but Mr. Sterling was not there. He had been moved quietly and quickly, just a few hours earlier. The criminals were always one step ahead. We desperately needed to find Mr. Sterling. I knew the people at Cygnus were completely organized, but Mark was completely reckless and predictable. I needed to use his simple, human panic against him. I carefully leaked a completely false piece of information to Mark through a secure, old channel I knew he still monitored. The fake information suggested that I had found a physical ledger, an old paper book, that proved his entire fraud, and I was going to hand it over to the national press that same afternoon. The lure of a physical ledger, something he couldn't simply wipe or delete, was too much for his panic to handle. Mark took the bait completely. He immediately bolted out of the company office in a complete, frantic panic, completely neglecting his security detail and his duties. David and the FBI were secretly tracking his movements. Mark drove straight to the new location where Mr. Sterling was being held, intending to warn the guards or somehow move the old man again. In a quick, coordinated strike, the FBI immediately raided the new location, successfully rescuing a traumatized but safe Mr. Sterling. Mark was immediately arrested the moment he arrived on the scene, still hysterical and completely confused. It felt like a massive victory, the final checkmate. The victory of Mark's arrest was short-lived. Just as the news of the arrest started to hit the national media, a new, cold reality settled over Oratech headquarters. Mr. Gray, the well-dressed man from Cygnus, had not been at the safe house. He was completely untouchable. He was at Oratech headquarters, calmly standing on the executive floor. He immediately sent out a simple, cold company-wide email. It announced that Mark was a liability and had been immediately terminated. Mr. Gray announced that he was formally taking complete operational control of the company to ensure a smooth IPO. The IPO, the email read, will proceed completely as planned. The truth was clear. Mark's removal was just a small, simple house cleaning. The criminal mastermind was still completely in charge of the huge, massive scheme. Mr. Gray was even more terrifyingly competent than Mark had ever been. He immediately locked down the entire company, purged the main systems, and brought in his own, sharp tech team to secure the critical live stream equipment. Within hours, Eliza's backdoor was discovered and completely sealed. My digital path to justice had been expertly and calmly shut down by the true criminal. The sudden, effective move by Mr. Gray completely crushed our immediate hope. With less than 24 hours until the IPO, we had completely lost our crucial digital access. Mr. Gray had sealed the live stream system tighter than a huge, strong bank vault. My only way to expose the truth was gone. We sat in the FBI van outside the Oratech building, the mood tense and desperate. The agent told us the simple truth. There was no other way in. If we couldn't hijack the stream, the billion-dollar laundering would happen, and Mr. Gray would simply disappear into the world, taking the clean money with him. I stared up at the massive, dark building, feeling the cold weight of the entire world on my shoulders. I realized that my highly technical, digital plan had completely failed. The only remaining hope was not in the computers or the complex network. It was in the human factor. I remembered the quiet, kind faces of the employees I used to talk to. The cleaning staff, the mailroom clerks, the people Mr. Gray and Mark never even bothered to notice. I realized there was one person in the building who might still trust me enough to risk everything. I just needed to convince them to do one simple, incredibly dangerous thing. I immediately contacted the one person in the building who might still help me. Ricardo, a friendly night cleaner who I used to share coffee with late at night. I reached him on his personal phone and explained the terrifying situation quickly, trying to sound completely desperate, but completely honest. I told him the company was a front for criminals who had hurt an innocent old man. Ricardo was completely shocked, but he had seen enough of Mark's and Sloane's cruel arrogance to believe me. He quickly agreed to help. The new plan was terrifyingly simple, I would give him a tiny, harmless-looking USB device containing the final, complete evidence. He would have to physically sneak it into the executive boardroom and plug it into the main presentation laptop before the stream went live. No network, no remote hack, just a simple physical plug-in. I drove the final, crucial device to a prearranged meeting spot, right near the huge building. Ricardo took the device, looking pale but determined. He promised me he would do it. I watched from the hidden FBI van as he went inside the huge building. Minutes later, I saw him walking slowly down the executive hallway toward the secured boardroom. But as he approached the huge, heavy doors, he was suddenly stopped by one of Mr. Gray's new, cold security detail. A muscular man with a suspicious look on his face. Ricardo was immediately turned away. The new security guard told him the boardroom was a secure area, and that all cleaning would be handled after the huge IPO event. We watched the scene from the FBI van, our hearts completely sinking. My last, best, most human plan had completely failed. But then a completely unexpected thing happened. Dennis, the disgruntled PR manager who was still secretly working for me, was walking down the hallway. He saw the entire confrontation. He quickly realized what was happening and what Ricardo was holding in his hand. Dennis knew this was the last possible moment to save the honest employees and destroy the criminals. He quickly intercepted Ricardo, whispering an excuse, and took the small, crucial device from him. Dennis still had his old, original PR access badge. He walked calmly into the huge boardroom under the simple, believable guise of preparing final press materials for the huge event. He walked right up to the main presentation laptop and quickly plugged the small device into the side. As the door closed, we watched the light on the device through a small, remote camera feed that David had secretly planted days ago. The light flickered green. Then terrifyingly, it immediately turned solid red. It wasn't completely connecting to the highly secure network. The clock was ticking down to the final, crucial second. The massive IPO event began. Millions of people around the world were now watching the live stream online, waiting for the massive valuation announcement. Mr. Gray walked onto the huge stage, looking incredibly smooth, confident, and utterly convincing, the perfect face of massive professional fraud. Clara, David, and Eliza were crammed into the small, hot FBI van nearby, working frantically on our remote connection. We had to fix the connection, or everything was completely lost. It's a firewall issue. He patched the port. Eliza shouted in a panic, trying to force the small device to connect. I felt the sweat running down my back. Mr. Gray began his final speech, the huge moment of the valuation announcement approaching quickly. Then, just as Mr. Gray was about to dramatically reveal the massive, final valuation, the small device's light on the screen suddenly flickered back to solid green. Eliza completely screamed in triumph. David looked at me, his eyes wide and shining with a mix of fear and excitement. "It's now or never, Clara," he whispered, his voice intense. "Your finger is on the button. Do it." I took a deep, final breath, my entire body shaking with cold adrenaline. I focused on the terrified face of the real Mr. Sterling, the innocent man they had tried to silence and kill. I thought about all the hardworking employees who were about to lose their jobs and their savings. With a simple, cold, absolute resolve, I clicked the button on the main console. The live stream immediately glitched, a quick, noticeable shudder across all the screens. Then, the worst thing happened to Mr. Gray. His smooth, confident face on the giant screen behind him, and on every screen watching the live stream globally, was completely replaced. Instead of the massive Oratech logo, the screen was completely filled with my carefully organized, undeniable dossier. The documents flashed by quickly, forged documents, copies of the bank statements showing the financial trails of the laundering, the secret video of Mark and David causing the fake data breach, and finally, a clear, damning photo of Mr. Gray with known dangerous crime figures. The event immediately descended into pure, uncontrollable chaos as Mr. Gray stared, completely stunned, at the huge screen behind him, his cold face replaced by the crushing truth. The moment the evidence hit the live stream, the silence in the huge room was immediately broken by screams and mass hysteria. Before Mr. Gray could even move, the FBI moved in, completely surrounding the stage. They arrested Mr. Gray right there, in front of the world's cameras. The live stream was immediately and completely cut, but it was already far too late. The undeniable, public evidence had been seen by millions, and was already spreading everywhere across the internet. Orateka's stock plummeted completely to zero before it could even officially trade. The entire billion-dollar laundering scheme had completely collapsed. News vans immediately swarmed the massive building, turning the celebratory IPO into a chaotic, massive crime scene. I sat in the FBI van, watching the entire, satisfying disaster unfold. In the middle of the deafening chaos, my personal phone rang. It was an anonymous call. I answered it cautiously. It was Mark, speaking from a cold, public holding cell. He was completely hysterical and sobbing. "They'll kill me here, Clara. You have to testify for me. You owe me. I told you everything." I quietly hung up the phone, completely finished with his lies and his pathetic cowardice. The fallout was massive, but for me, it was a moment of complete, powerful vindication. I was immediately hailed as a whistleblower hero across the entire national media. I gave a poised, powerful interview on a major news network, calmly and clearly laying out the entire terrifying story, from the cruel betrayal and the false data breach to the identity theft of an innocent old man. My entire focus shifted to the people who truly mattered. I went and visited the real Mr. Sterling, who was now completely safe and receiving all the necessary support from the FBI. He greeted me with a huge smile and tears in his eyes, thanking me for saving his name and his life. He was the only victim who truly mattered to me. A week later, I received a huge, official letter from a prestigious law firm. They were representing the remaining, panicked Orateka board of directors. The letter was not a huge, terrible lawsuit. The board wanted a complete, urgent meeting with me. They knew I was the only person who could possibly save anything from the disaster. The meeting with the remaining board members was held in a cold, empty conference room at a temporary office. They looked completely defeated and utterly desperate. They were not trying to sue me. They were trying to beg me to help them. They offered me an immediate, complete deal. They wanted me to come back to the completely ruined company as the interim CEO. My new job would not be to save the cruel company, but to completely oversee the ethical winding down of Orateka, manage the large asset sales, and most importantly, ensure all the completely innocent employees were treated fairly and received proper severance pay. They were desperately trying to salvage any value and clear the company's name slightly before the final collapse. I looked around the huge, beautiful, but ruined office that I had once been so cruelly fired from. The board members sat there, quietly waiting for my answer, completely ready to agree to any condition I might demand. I knew I couldn't rebuild the fraud, but I could completely protect the innocent people who had been lied to. I had the power to close the door on Mark's and Mr. Gray's cruelty forever, but I would do it only on my own terms. I accepted the position of interim CEO, but only on the exact terms I demanded. My very first act as CEO was a simple, powerful command. I formally started the complete dissolution of Orateka. I knew the company was toxic and couldn't be saved. It had to be destroyed completely. My second, crucial act was to use the remaining capital from the sale of assets to fund a massive, generous severance package for all the honest employees, ensuring they walked away with dignity. My third, final act was to start a completely new, powerful foundation with the real Alistair Sterling to help other victims of cruel identity theft. The final scene of that long, terrible story was me, sitting in a new, bright, sun-drenched office of my own startup. I had started it with the whistleblower reward money, and it was immediately backed by real, ethical investors who completely believed in my integrity. I was no longer the betrayed victim, the desperate investigator, or the cold avenger. I was the powerful, quiet architect of my own destiny. The name on the door wasn't Sterling's, and it certainly wasn't Mark's. It was mine.